Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. Welcome to another second breakfast. How you guys doing? Sorry I wasn't here yesterday. Had a previous engagement I couldn't get out of, but I am back to see how you guys are all doing. What kind of weekend you had? What you got on tap for the rest of the week? Let's see what we got going on here. Nobody in the chat. Nobody in the green room. Who the hell are you guys, man? I miss one day and you forget all about me. No, I'm kidding. Um, it's it's all good. I had a pretty good weekend. Let's see. Friday was the giveaway, which was hey, what's happening, Pewee? Which was magnificent. Gave away a crap ton of stuff to some great folks out there in TV land. All good friends of ours, people who wholeheartedly deserved something special for hanging out with us all these years. Like I said in the show, in August, we will start our seventh year of this nonsense. I honestly, hey, what's happening? I I see you're in chat now, but are you in the green room? That's the real question, right? How you doing, Bubba? I'm glad things are looking up for you guys. I've been following. You're literally the only reason I go on Facebook. I've literally I just but if I get one of those messages that you posted something, I'll check it and make sure everything's good. I don't always comment, but I do check it because Facebook is just oh man, kind of a time sink for me. I'll get sucked in looking at stuff and forwarding all those missing people reports, and I could get stuck in an hour doing that. Just being there, I see the first one, share it. Oh, here comes another one, share it, and I'll just do that, hoping that someone finds somebody because having worked there, it's a fate worse than death. It's just the nightmarish level of worry. What's up, Dino Laser? Uh, you know what, Dino? We stole the idea from other folks, and we tried to honestly one up everybody. I'm kind of amused when I see someone give away like a 20, 30, $50 book and call it a day. I'm like, yeah, we could do better than that. Now, mind you, they might do it more often and it might add up to more dollars, but that's not really what matters. What matters is getting like really cool stuff, not just like what we're shilling or promoting, but something, uh, special, something we've hung on to, or something we got specifically to share with somebody else that, we don't produce anything but, noise. And, if I see something, I'm like, yeah, I want to give one of those away. Like the Dungeons and Lasers core set, that is just a massive, massive gateway to a whole lot of fun to reinforce that immersion, especially for the younger folks who are spoiled with video games and things like that. Here you get a 3D dungeon that you can see the walls and feel the closing in on you, so to speak. Um, and we will do another giveaway, probably at 2,000 subs, maybe 1,500 if it really starts taking forever. But I've noticed we've been gaining some new people, and that's kind of cool. It's weird. We'll go up and then we'll slowly get ticked away. We'll lose one, lose one, lose, get one, lose one. But we actually, I was surprised we were at like 11:40 this morning. I'm like, cool, cool. Let's get 11:50. Let's do that by the end of the week, maybe. So share this out with all your friends who are interested in hanging out with some really cool people. Uh, who usually show up, but then again, they usually wait until I've already been doing this for like a half hour to an hour and I'm just burnt. I'm like, I can only talk by myself for so long, and then it gets kind of awkward. But after the giveaway, we had Owen Owl's wrap up to the Alien game, where of course we all died, and I kind of see now why Off Grid left, because he didn't want to like kill us all and then have to kill himself, because that's what was sort of plotted out by the rules of the Alien RPG, where you all have like objectives. Which I meant to mention this. I really don't like the way it kind of forces you to just play a part uh, by the book, so to speak. As in, you've got to do this objective, and this objective pretty much takes up all your time in the game trying to do that. So there's really not a lot of room for making the character your own. And then, as the game progresses, second act, third act, those objectives will change a little. And again, it's a little railroady when you think about it. But Alien is one of those games where it's only got so much life in it. No matter what you do, you couldn't run a 3 to 5 year campaign of Alien without it just either being like an hour a session once a week, or really delving into some of the other side things, like I said, like aspects of Blade Runner or Predator, or God only knows what, and taking away from what is Alien. And then let's see, Saturday, that was that. Then Sunday, I had my AD&D game with Omen and Armstrong and Off Grid and Cal Vanoni, and that was it was fun because it was the guys, but we didn't have anything really planned, so they had to spend the session planning on what they were going to do, so that I could then prepare for the next session. Which normally I can ad lib stuff, but they really wanted to do something kind of big, and that required a lot of logistics and strategy and mustering of troops and acquiring of equipment, and that I didn't want to just hand wave all of that. So next Sunday should be pretty intense, where they're going to storm the floating island and try and take it over. Excuse me, and make it their own little flying stone Death Star, or a Star Destroyer, not Death Star because it's kind of triangular shaped. What's happening, Chris? How you doing? So I don't know if you guys caught my Grindhouse review video from the Red Room this morning. Interesting how many things after the Grindhouse era were influenced by it, but just try to pretend like they weren't. What's happening, Death Angel Shadow? Like I was noticing, the movie that I had forgot the name of was Big Trouble in Little China. Definitely kind of a watered down Grindhouse movie, if you don't mind me saying. I think that's kind of what they were shooting for without admitting to it, along with, of course, obviously, Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and so many other things that have come out since then. Even the movie Descent, I forgot to mention that when I mentioned the cannibal movies, which I never really even knew much about, but that sounds uh, worse than your zombie Dawn of the Dead movies, because these are people that aren't dead. They know what they're doing, and they choose to do it anyway. It's just nasty. Whereas I realize in Descent, they had devolved into a subhuman thing that just didn't really have a culture or any morals whatsoever. Living in the dark like that, it was just eat or be eaten, and the poor girls pretty much got ate, didn't they? That was a horrific movie. Kind of also reminded me of the Conan story Red Nails, where that too is how the folks in the castle survived. Just absolutely horrific. And how Grindhouse still is alive and well, at least on Telemundo. Everything on there, if it's not a variety show, which also I thought would have not been around, sort of faded off into obscurity. But no, they're alive and well, as are all the exploitation movies you could possibly want, provided your Spanish is up and running. In which case, you have an absolute plethora of just cheesy, uh, low budget schlock. Just lots of gangland violence and nunsploitation and biker movies and car races and shoot 'em ups and fisticuffs and torture and all that. As above, so below is a superior take on Descent. Takes place in the catacombs of Paris. It's freaky deaky. Excuse me, folks. Rough night. I've never even heard of that movie. Tarantino and Rodriguez Grindhouse double feature movies back in 2007. Uh, Now that you mention it, I do remember that. One of my favorites from Rodriguez was Four Rooms. Not really. I suppose you could kind of throw it in with the sort of noir detective mystery kind of things, but it's kind of a mixed bag of just absolute weirdness. Uh, but yeah, and Rodriguez did a bunch of other movies that definitely fall into that, and of course the uh, the book has a large list of movies that qualify and could be, I suppose, enjoyed if that's your bag. I was surprised how many I'd seen over the years. I Spit on Your Grave, things like that. Um, and some I wouldn't mind checking out, but I'm not going to tell you which ones because I just get a ration of shit for that. No, it wasn't Ilsa. That's Brian's bag apparently. Which I know there's a bunch of you guys out there that do enjoy a lot of that stuff. I'm guessing uh, more than would be willing to admit. But I got to admit, when I saw that cover, I'm like, that is so reminiscent of the Venture Brothers art style of season one, maybe even season two, before it really started to take off and they could afford better animation and stuff like that. It was like there's so many different little nods to that sort of schlock and over the topism and uh, violence without, because it's the Venture Brothers, the blood, the guts and stuff are not really there. It's just red splotches, which is, for cartoons still a bit much, but so many different things, the way Brock would mess people up and, you know, shove their hands into their own butts all the way up to the freaking elbow. Just crazy things that make the monarch swallow his own butterfly wings and just, ridiculous things that nobody, of course, could survive. And many times they didn't. But a lot of the characters, even like Molotov cocktease, reminded me of so many of the nunsploitation movies. I don't know why she was nothing like a nun, but something about it just seemed like they had seen a couple of those movies. Um, Obviously, Jefferson Twilight, right out of he only hunts Blackulas. To this day, that's still just hysterically racist, but in a good way because it's his choice and that's what he chooses to do. Mind you, even though there are many scenes where he does end up tangling with white vampires, like there's a difference. It really shouldn't matter. But I guess because he lives in where he does, that's all he bumps into. Maybe the fact that there was a movie called Blackula is just who were they marketing that to? Just uh, Chris. A rusty venture is when you pleasure yourself so many times you can't anymore because you're kind of rusty looking. Just put it that way. And that's according to Brock Sampson at the end. All the other descriptions were again kind of what moved the Venture Brothers and other things. Of course, it was the '70s. The things between the monarch and Doctor Girlfriend, Mrs. the Monarch, etc. The little quips that they spouted out, just rattled off or snuck in there, so incredibly suggestive, without really saying any saying exactly. Yes, it was absolutely part of the black black exploitation genre. Not something I mean, I did see Blackula once, like on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon on like Channel 5, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And then I think Eddie Murphy did something like that, which was obviously a callback to having probably grown up and seen that. But you just really, some of those things just and I did grow up in the '70s, weren't really a big thing to see on TV. And we went to the movies. We would go to the drive-in almost exclusively till they tore them down. And every once in a while, there'd be like some cheesy, opening movie, or in a lot of cases, it would actually be the second part of the double feature, so that people could come in and watch the movie they wanted. But if they wanted to stick around, they could watch, a second movie. But for the most part, we didn't really have a lot of that. Yes, yes, they did. Black Dynamite. Also, I think, to be fair, I think the Boondocks kind of mirrored a lot of that, and or at least tried to go in that sort of edgy kind of what the hell sort of way. But my point is, I think that they're until politically correctness infects all of society, I think there's always going to be a market or an audience, at least. Vampire in Brooklyn, maybe that's the one I was thinking. Was that the one with Eddie Murphy? There's always going to be an audience for people who want edgier, grittier, sleazier, darker entertainment. And I guess it's better than them seeking it in real life, being able to, watch a movie and go, and then, go on to something else. Excuse me, I'm coughing a lot this morning. It has suddenly gotten really, really dry and dusty around here with the weather change, and I might be having an allergy issue. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have some new things to help fuel my Venture Brothers slash Supernatural RPG campaign. I still don't know what rules set. I don't think that most of the red rooms really will cut it, because I need the characters to have more hit points. Uh, Being able to survive ridiculous amounts of damage, especially the main characters, in order to give them life, instead of well, one of the main characters died in issue, or session one. I'm not really going to do the cloning back from the dead stuff if I can avoid it, because it is an RPG, and that just, once you throw that into the mix, people start getting crazy. Oh my gosh, folks. I've never heard of this one at all. I don't recognize it in any way, shape, or form. it definitely sounds like something I probably would have just glossed over. Probably never really wanted to, spend my time watching. Was it good? Was it funny? Was it trash? Because God knows there's a lot of that. I was watching some videos which I've been doing lately. Watching a lot of like one of the videos I watched last night was the top 50 sci-fi movies of all time, and to get ideas or glimpses at movies that I've never seen. One of the movies on the list that I haven't seen, and maybe I've only seen it once, was with 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt. I remember that being just an absolute, weird movie that I didn't quite, catch all the hints and nods and things like that and the subtle clues. So I definitely want to watch that one again. And a few others. Gattaca, that was an interesting movie when I finally got to see it. I've only seen that one also once. And I remember growing up going, I wonder what that movie's about. What in the hell? Oh, it's a squirrel up on my neighbor's roof. Thought it was a rat. And a few others. And of course, the top three did include Empire Strikes Back, which I think is one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time. But putting some of the other ones where they did, Anyways, I was also watching uh, some videos on exploitation movies and grindhouse movies in the hopes that it would spark memories of having seen those movies, which, in fact, there were a bunch of them that I didn't realize I had seen just by little clips or images of the actors involved and that sort of thing. And so I've been watching, a lot of different videos on like horror movies and sci-fi movies and uh, now exploitation movies to give me reasons to go and watch the movies all the way through, see if they'd be something I want to add to my files, mental files of tropes and ideas and scenes and inspiration for my upcoming RPGs. I only want to run right now. There's only two or three games that I'm really, mentally working on. That's my Traveler 24, my Venture Brothers game, and some sort of wide ranging epic space opera, something really big and grand, like very much like the Flash Gordon movie, but with a little bit more planet hopping and exploring strange, weird worlds and cultures. Pootie Tang was okay, but Undercover Brother was pretty good satire of black exploitation. There was a lot of characters in there that would slot right into. I believe it. I wholeheartedly think that Doc Hammer and Jackson Public had to have seen. If I could recall 20 to 50 movies on the list uh, that I've seen over the past, then between the two of them, they had to have had at least another 50 of their own, and obviously that stuff's gonna seep into their writing, which 7 season, 20 years of writing a television cartoon show. You're going to contemplate all the things you've seen over the years, and some of it's going to fit and some of it's not. Um, and if it fits and it fits well, then of course you use it. So us as dungeon masters, game masters, whatever you want to call it, we're constantly on the look for new inspiration, and it's really rough because as like a GM, at least with like a movie producer or director or writer or what have you, you got one project, you put a bunch into it, and then you can call it a day. You can literally retire on that kind of money and that kind of fame and fortune and success, and never have to do another thing again. But us as GMs, we don't really, unless life tells us otherwise, we don't self quit. We don't just say, yeah, I'm gonna hang up the old Dungeon Master's Guide, just do something else. It's really not something we can let go of that easy. I know even in the times that I wasn't dungeon mastering, I was working on the next game or planning the next game, or I was in a game and not necessarily dungeon mastering, but thinking, okay, what am I going to do with my character next, etc. Because these things do take on a life of their own, and it's amazing how much time we can put into them. And once we've done that, we in for a penny, in for a pound kind of mentality. There's another word for it, or another phrase for it. When you've put in X amount of time into a thing or a project, you know, it only makes more sense logically to put in more time into the thing or project. So what are you guys up to these days? Yeah, you guys got any big projects? Any big things you're working on? Death Angel, you got anything you want to shout out and tell us about? That's a big no, huh? Okay. Thought maybe you'd have a big show coming up, or something like that. I'm currently before me. I've got a couple of new projects. These are from a game called Sector Alex, Alix. This is a 12 millimeter attack craft with room for maybe 10 or 12 millimeter miniatures. Here's one of the guys that all I've done is zenithal highlight before I give his uniform a quick paint job. They are pretty small, but I saw these ships. This one, kind of a cool little. I've already done the base because it was pretty easy. I gave it sort of an antique look. And then there's the other one, which is actually very reminiscent of a World War II D-Day landing craft with the drop down door for the crew to disembark. Really should have a weapon, I think, to give cover fire to the men, don't you think? Should be something up here to da 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 daka daka whatever. But I saw these. Obviously, they were painted up much better than I'm probably going to do. But I saw them and I'm like, $10, $12, whatever it was each. The crew were relatively cheap. I airships flying anything in a lower tech setting where flight wasn't really a thing yet, or games like what was it? What was that airship game back in the day? The video game, Skies of Arcadia. You guys remember that game? Freaking loved that game. That was one of my favorites for a good long time, at least till I beat it. Except for that damn cloud of darkness you had to navigate. What the hell were they thinking? Oh my god! Even with the strategy guide, that took me, you know, a very long. I don't think it took me more than a day, but it was a day, of aggravation getting through that. Everything else, of course, was a lot of fun. I still have it, I believe. It's a Sector Alex, Alix. It was a Kickstarter. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff on Etsy. I think Carbon Miniatures is where I got them from. I'd have to double check. And she has all this stuff, and I think her prices are the cheapest. I know it's got the word carbon in the name of the Etsy seller. Everybody else is charging outrageous prices for them, and a lot of the vehicles in the game are like pirates and junker looking things, very haphazardly built. This is like the Northern Alliance or some such. So you've got the big military, but there's no reason you couldn't just have multiples of this and multiples of that. Just paint them in a different color and go at it. Maybe scrub off the N and create your own little insignia there. I have no idea how the game plays or what the rules are or anything like that. I'll look into that as I get more stuff. But there's a lot of uh, floating, like not cities, but like ports and docks and places to refuel. And there's also a lot of like flying creatures, like flying squids and whales and things like that, so that you can run into random wandering monsters, as it were, flying fish that will eat your crews face off, and all kinds of stuff. Just look up Sector Alex. I couldn't find anything on eBay. What's up, Paul? Reminds me of that Leviathan's game that Catalyst took forever to get to market. Imperial Age Skyship game. Pretty sure it was more expensive than $10 a ship too. Yeah, Catalyst sucks. Yeah, I did actually find my uh, BattleTech game that TM James sent us. It's been there the whole time, but it was sideways or some such. So I just didn't. It just didn't register as being it. It's been there the whole time, and I know a lot of people that really went. What's up, off grid? That really went whole hog on the new BattleTech. But for me, when they do the things that they did to their writer and other people and the woke crap and the leftist mentality of progressivism and just the things that don't need to be added to an IP or a game world that never existed before and would never exist in the future. If you think that corporations really want that kind of ideology in their soldiers, you really don't know how war and violence and expansionism actually take place. You don't succeed if you hang on to those things. The whole world has gotten to where it is in good ways, uh, not because of those things that you want to introduce, but because of the tried and true traditions and natural behaviors that have existed up until recently. And I just couldn't get into it, knowing that that's where my money would be going. I'm more inclined to go back and buy old BattleTech stuff because I used to play it a long time ago. Man, I was like 14. There was this place called Gamesmanship. It was like in every mall across the country. The mecca of game stores, just clean and stacked to the roof with brand new box games, nothing used, everything just like right there, dice and miniatures, etc. I picked up a couple of boxes of the old metal miniatures and the rules, and we tried playing, and it was just not really well received in my neck of the woods because uh, nobody really watched giant stompy robot cartoons except me, and I tried to get my friends into the original Gundam and Robotech, and even when the BattleTech cartoon came out, my friends just didn't weren't into it, so it didn't really work out until I got new friends, and that was much later. And you guys, of course, all seem to love it. But do you love Catalyst? Yeah, is it worth it? Do you love BattleTech enough to give people that hate you your money? I'm not capable of doing such things. Enough of that rant, right? But this looks fun. Uh, Check out Etsy. Look up Sector Alex if you're interested. Uh, who knows? Maybe James L will grab some of these minis and fix up his camera and start hosting games of it because I know he saw it. He's like, that's freaking awesome looking. And there's two different paint job schemes I've seen. One where everything is like copper, rusty copper looking, like everything. It's okay. And then there's this other paint scheme where it's like blue and white and crisp and like right out of the factory with the paint still wet, shiny and sparkly. I'm gonna go with my. I'm really digging this metallic blue for my police force, and I'm thinking I'll just continue that over. What's up, Swords and Stones? I've also got this one in the same scheme, but I actually went over it with a black wash. Yes, there was a BattleTech cartoon, very short lived. I like this one better for some reason. Uh, Entrances in the back, very reminiscent of the vehicle from Alien, which I was hoping that one was going to be more like, but it wasn't. I don't know why. I kind of feel like it kind of ripped off. That one is a Grendel resin model from the 80s, and the other one is a 3D print from somebody on Etsy. Yeah, I remember the BattleTech cartoon. I could have swore it was canceled or something. Uh, it was on for a very short period of time and then gone. I want to say it was kind of around the same time. Uh, uh, like Biker Mice from Mars and Spider Riders, maybe around that era, maybe before that. Hold on a second. Hold on, I can't actually read what you wrote here. There's a bunch of games I like made by people who would hate me, so I wait until the game hits the secondary market so my money doesn't go to them. Fair enough. I've done the same thing with a few things. It's pretty cool that all the BattleTech minis are all available online through Ralpartha, right? I forget who Iron Winds. Don't they own them now? BattleTech is way more affordable than anything GW puts out, right? But they're not the same. They're both sci-fi, but but GW doesn't really have that affordable level mech game. They've got Titan Legions and stuff like that, but the difference between a $50 singular mech model that you have to spend hours, if not weeks, putting together and painting versus uh, a lance of mechs that you could paint. You don't have to put together. You could paint and have ready the day before the game. In a day, 6 8 hours or less, depending on how you know complicated you want the paint job. You can just primer them, psh, spray that, primer them a base color, psh, give them a wash, psh, call it a day, right? Maybe throw some little camo stripes or maybe some decals or something, and you're ready to go. It's not quite the same, but I kind of get the idea. That's a cool blue. Thinking of some white highlights for the police. Maybe I was actually thinking more gold, just to emphasize the iron fistedness of the regime, if you, as it were, to let you know that they are in charge. Period. Uh, Probably expensive. That was before companies like the one that did Reboot and Transformers. Beast Wars showed up with the ability to crank out consistent CGI. Okay, I wish Raul Partha was still producing the AD&D line of minis, including Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms, and Ravenloft box sets. God, sorry, dry throat, guys. Um, I'm not certain that they don't. I would just go over to Iron Winds because I could have swore I saw a bunch of Raul Partha stuff, and they may have just renamed some of those minis. What I would do if you're really interested in getting those is go to Lost Minis Wiki, look up Raw Partha, look up Dragonlance or Forgotten Realms or whatever, and learn what those minis look like. Uh, and see if you can't find them on eBay cheaper, or go over to the Iron Winds shop and see if you can remember the specific like pose or sculpt, and see if they've just renamed it, because they may have the rights to the mold, but they may not have the rights to the IP from uh, what's ostensibly now Wizards of the Coast. Yes, actually, I played the hell out of the Mage Knight version of BattleTech, It was very popular, uh, very broken until like each new expansion would have rules clarifications, errata, and additional rules. And by the time it got to the end, it finally fixed like most of the things that really sucked about it. Like you had to move all your dudes, and then the other guy moved all his dudes, and then the other guy got to shoot. In which case, you were just standing there with your dick in your hand because you had to move, unless you just said, "Okay, fine, I'm going to stay here. You move." No, I'm not going to move. You move. No, I'm not going to move. You move. Back and forth because I've seen that. It's like I moved an inch. What? I'm just moving an inch. Because if you moved up too close and then you're just standing there, now you're in range. But guess what? It's the other guy's turn to shoot, and you just get freaking riddled. And he would get to shoot all of his dudes, not like you get to move, you get to move, you get to move, you get to move, and then shoot, 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 which is kind of, always the better mechanic. I think Warzone was like the first game I ever came across where you'd activate a unit or a squad or a dude or a machine, and that include doing whatever you wanted to do with it, move, shoot, hand to hand, etc. All your stuff in one activation. Then the other guy got an activation and could do whatever he wanted with whatever unit he picked, and you'd go back and forth. So it wasn't all like move, shoot, you move, I move, everything, and it just that's not how the world works. You don't see people standing there waiting for their turn to shoot. You know what I mean? Um, it was really a dumb mechanic, and so many war games out there actually had that until they didn't, and people started figured that out. Metal minis are my favorite by a long shot. Same here, dude. I started out on them too. They don't shed toxic microplastics and resin into our home, landfill, general environment. Yeah, uh, but I will tell you this: I did notice with lead miniatures that even handling them, I could literally feel like because I used to paint, strip them of paint professionally. I still kind of do, and then resell them on eBay. Uh, for a good decade, I did this, and I would notice my fingertips starting to feel like a burning sensation from touching the lead, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't even think about lead poisoning or anything like that. That might explain a few things, right, folks? But there, you can take a lead miniature, and if you take a piece of paper and you take like the base, you can write or make marks on paper with it. That's how easily the lead particles come off. So there is some danger, and if you tack your mini down to something and you don't hold it and it is lead, uh you know people still play with lead minis, and they're gonna until they rot away. But there are some things to be said about plastics in some respects, like tanks and things like that. I wouldn't want to have to buy like the old steam tank from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, that big giant monster metal tank. Every one I ever got had warped walls that were a bitch to straighten out. Plastic bottle tanks, definitely the way to go. Aircraft, anything bigger than a guy mounted on a horse or a motorcycle should probably be plastic. I'm just gonna say. I haven't bought Iron Winds. Hold on. I haven't bought many Iron Winds minis, but the owner is Mike No, and he was an apprentice metalsmith that Raul Partha hired on back in the day. Cool guy. Met him while volunteering at Gary Con years ago. Cool. Yeah, the white metals are much better. I also know a guy, if you're interested in any of like the Hyborian age kind of Raul Partha minis, or if you're looking for any of the old heritage minis, I can uh, send you his email info. He doesn't like to advertise because it's a side hustle, and he doesn't want a crap ton of business that would just get backlogged. I honestly, I can count probably on two hands the things I've had to pin that were metal overall. Arms and legs, I never did that. Maybe legs to bases, sure, but arms and legs, not so much. Bigger things like these guys, the only thing I pinned were them to the bases because the bases are plastic, and these are the only bases I had that would work. Otherwise, I don't normally pin that much. I do have a pin vice drill right here, and I've used it, but really not that much. I think I've used it uh, just as much on hand sculpted things that I've created that I needed a connection that would be strong. Uh, but yeah, I really don't. I think even did I pin anything on that? I don't think so. I can't really think of all that many things I've had to pin in the last decade or so. Okay, I could see that with like maybe the BattleTech torsos to legs maybe, and feet to bases maybe, things like that. Definitely uh, larger robots. I don't even think I pinned the original Dreadnought for 40K that I have. I think it fit well enough together that I didn't. And if you use a good epoxy, which is kind of a epoxy moron, uh, I can't really think of a good epoxy that doesn't dry up in the tubes before you actually use it. If you're gonna buy a two part epoxy, make sure you're gonna use it in the next day or so. I cannot tell you how many brand new like those syringy things that I've thrown away as soon as I open them. I'm like, oh, frozen solid, huh? Kid you not. So many times, even good stuff like the Gorilla Glue or supposedly Gorilla Glue. Who am I kidding? Gorilla Glue is like one of the worst uh, glues on the market. I'm always snapping little bits off from fragile plastics like Sentinel antenna mass, similar issue. I war games, so my minis get handled and not often kindly as there are time crunches or involved. Right, right. Um, but I hear you. But at the same time, like the masks for Man of War, I don't know that they would have been improved by being made metal, and it definitely would have increased the price. They were fragile as hell. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that that would have been it's like one of the few occasions where, because like a lot of models back in the day, they'd be all plastic, but then like one little gun or something would be metal. But this is like the opposite. It's the ship was metal, but the masks were plastic. I missed that damn game. One of the best games ever. If you've never played Man of War, you missed out. I would love to see this have like equal equally awesome rules with templates and movement arcs and things like that. I may have to look. James L sent me a PDF of the Man of War rules, and might have to look and see if we can use something like that. Maybe cobble together some templates and things like that. Because I love games like that. The only game like that I didn't really love was Battlefleet Gothic because it seemed to be like ridiculously dumbed down. When you're talking about ships that were that massive, cities in space, and they moved around like ironclads with no elevation, uh, no thought given to the actual physics and whatnot involved in that kind of warfare, which as ridiculous as it is, still would have some basic things that were not included in those mechanics. We even played the old Spanish Main Pirates of the Caribbean pocket model game. That was a lot of fun as well. I wish it wasn't like a blind bag, collectible card game that really ruined its longevity for players. If you go look to try to play it now, you will spend so much money to get those cards to put together those models to play that game that it's just, in a way, it would be cheaper to get back into Man of War. And that should not be the case because those ships were flimsy and prone to breakage, prone to wearing the masts and the holes that they plugged in down because they were so tight that you'd have to, really squeak and stretch to get the mast back into the hole. And then after a while, they would fall out because you had to pluck. The hit points were the masts. And so each time you took a hit, you'd lose a mast. And thus you'd lose maneuverability, etc. Kind of like Broadside from Milton Bradley. But as you pulled and replaced those masts, the holes got worn away and stripped, as it were, making it harder and harder to keep the masts in. Reaper has been 3D printing their Dungeon Dwellers line, and they rule. Very durable, great detail. Most of them are one piece, so no gluing or seam lines. Funny you mentioned Dungeon Dwellers. Um, I own all of the original lead Dungeon Dwellers that were made by Heritage, which Reaper then bought when Heritage went out of business. And I'm waiting for the Dungeon Dweller game, going on 2+ years now, beyond when it was supposed to be released. So Reaper's kind of ticked me off when it comes to that, but their metal miniatures are some of the best you can get, as a 1 or 2 piece miniature for the price. There's a few people out there, independents, that make some really good stuff as well, but consistently and easily, especially on the secondary market where you can get them for like sometimes $3.95 because people were forced to buy a big chunk of minis for their shop and now they're just sitting there because nobody wants this or that model, or their area has been saturated and they just can't sell them. So I'll go on eBay to a couple of places that offer free shipping and just every like 4 to 6 times a year I'll get like a $50 package of 10 to 15 Reaper miniatures. When I notice something that I'm looking for, or something that's at a good price, things like that. Drillakillas, I with those orc man of war ships. Uh, but when it comes to Reapers plastics, their white minis, their white bones are absolute dog water. The worst games ever, the worst miniatures ever made for the hobby, in my opinion. The gray bones are okay when they're big, thick, chunky models. I don't know how the like skeletons and humans and stuff like that are going to stand the test of time. I know that the white plastic, every last one of them will eventually collapse under its own weight because ankles just aren't enough plastic to hold up, 10 to 50 times its weight in plastic. So, Grandma, listening in, it's Employees Appreciation Day and Taco Tuesday at work, lunchtime, party going on. Nice, nice. Your lunch starts at 9:30 here. What is it? 9:54 my time. Yeah, it's second breakfast. First breakfast was bacon and a waffle. I get these great waffles. I think they're called Saint Pierre. They're only about this freaking big. They're tiny, but they're freaking glorious. One is too many. They've got this hard sort of sugar glaze on them. You throw them in the toaster a couple of times, get them nice and crispy on the outside, squishy on the inside. Oh man, whew! I don't even put that much maple syrup on them because they're already like 40,000 calories or some such. Um, the syrup is actually more for the bacon. You guys do that? You throw maple syrup on your bacon? I growing up as a kid, going to Denny's was like a big freaking deal. And for some reason, the syrup at Denny's, this was back in the day. Now it's like crap. Was like really good syrup, so we would just like drown everything in that syrup. And it, of course, your sausage and bacon, they were going to get syrup on them. Your eggs were going to get syrup on them, and there was just something about that combo of flavors that once I was in charge of my own menu, so to speak, that was just a thing. It's like, if I went to a restaurant, I would just, can I get some syrup? Yeah, but you ordered a breakfast sandwich. Can I get some syrup? You know, just yeah. Yes, they had a chance of turning into submarines, which were not, which they were not designed to. Yeah, well, all seagoing vessels do have that option. It's very few captains that choose that option. Their white plastic is hot garbage. They should be criminally charged for selling those. Yeah, you're not wrong. I have this glorious white dragon that I painted on the show. It turned out freaking gorgeous. One of my best paint jobs ever. And it was standing up all right. White plastic. Now it looks like he's eating out of a Snoopy Dog bowl because he's just like bowing down to the ground. It's just absolute embarrassment. And had I known, I would have never, done anything with it. I also have a. I'm probably going to give that away. I should go pull that out because I would be an absolute rat bastard if I ever, tried to sell it to somebody. It's the red dragon called Cinder. That's white plastic in the box, big, nice, fancy box. Ooh, cool! I got my first red dragon. Oh shit! My red dragon is now friggin' bent over like it's taken in the ass or something. After just a few short years, even my Cthulhu. Oh man, he's starting to do the same thing. Big, giant, awesome Reaper Bones Cthulhu miniature. I, I could have swore they made those at some point actually in metal. Can you imagine getting one of those bastards? It'd be like owning the archive Emperor Dragon. Someone had me asked me to put it together and paint it for them, and I did. And that was the closest I was ever going to get to owning that thing back in the day. Now they're like $500 if you can find them, and getting one of those Cthulhu. Yeah, I'd pay. I'd shell it $100, no problem for one of those. Much more than that, I'd have to think about it. And in the time it took me to think about it, someone else would swoop it up, going, "Yeah," because my Cthulhu, Jackie and I painted back in the day, it looked great, looked really, really good, but I can see him starting to slowly. And mind you, he's got some pretty fat ankles that you would think would hold up, but I'm guessing that the plastic that they used for that was half wax and half recycled Chinese crap plastic that should never be allowed into the country. It's just absolutely horrible, horrible materials, and I still have a crap ton of those. That Tenkar, he sent me his entire Kickstarter of the white plastic, just because he knew he was never going to paint them way back in the day, and I still have a box full of them, all kinds of odds and ends. I'm never ever gonna do anything with, and they're just, I get it that they probably didn't know that it was going to do that. They probably just thought it's a cheap, solution for people who can't afford the metal, and it's reusing recycled plastics, probably good for the environment, etc. Uh, I want to believe they didn't know they were going to, lean and fall over under their own weight. But there is still that part of me that's like, yeah, they knew. They fucking knew. They knew what they were doing. The Sam Kinison in me is like raging right now. But that's why I tend to stick with metal when I can, or things that can't possibly do that because of the size or the shape. With like Dungeons and Lasers, I know that's never going to happen. Uh, Everything is Basically weld the pieces together with testers or Tamiya liquid plastic cement. It's not going anywhere. It's not gonna bend. It's not gonna warp. It may snap, in which case I can probably glue it back together and fix it. I'm looking at a couple of shelves full of their stuff right now. It's like, yeah, none of those things are gonna wilt, but they probably all will get damaged in the years before Jackie is in charge of them after I leave this world. I don't know what he will do with them. I know if he lets his children anywhere near them, uh, he'll be like, yeah, you should have waited. Kind of like me in comic books with Jackie. And if you're not careful, you wait too long, and the kids just they're never gonna. I don't think he's ever read a comic book all the way through, and that's all my fault because I have tens of thousands of comic books. He should have read all of them, but they were at the time too fragile. And who knows, maybe when he gets a little older and has more free time, he may want to, but more than likely he'll just grab a PDF and read them that way, which in my opinion takes not all, but takes a huge amount of the fun out of it. You remember when you could take a comic book and roll it up and throw it in your back pocket and run off to go do something, and then share it with a friend or trade. Hey, I'll trade you this for that. Because that's the way what they were. That's what they were meant, or how they were meant to be treated. Not like collector's items. As soon as they come out, you have to read with freaking rubber gloves and under glass and all that shit. First breakfast is 3 to 4 a.m. Second breakfast 5:30. Second lunch 12:30. And the watch is between first and second. Sleep at 2 a.m. Did I mention I have determined to work with hobbits? There is a snack time too. I bought the Tarrasque and the Cthulhu. The Tarrasque is all fucked up and droopy and sticky, so I'll probably never bother with the Cthulhu. Yeah. Ever played Mustangs and Messerschmitts? That seemed to be a huge around your hometown area, especially among the grognards. I have never even heard of it. I would love to play it if it's anything like the old Ace of Aces or even the Games Workshop Aeronauticus Imperialis, where you pick a maneuver, you just pick a maneuver, then you reveal the maneuver, and then you execute the maneuver, and you end up where you end up. And if somebody's in your line of sight, you can roll the dice and try to riddle them with holes and send them back down to earth. I loved Ace of Aces. You remember those games? The little pocket book where you each had a book, and you look at your picture, which was your view out your cockpit, and you could see what you could see, and then down below you had a bunch of maneuvers, and if you picked a maneuver, you told your opponent what page to turn to, and then you flipped to your page, and they would flip to that page and tell you what page to flip to, for them, etc. And you would see what you would see, and you had to maneuver. It was really, really innovative. It kind of like, if you've ever taken a school book and tried to animate a little picture at the corner of the book, and then when you flipped all the pages real quick, you could see the little image that you did, like sort of animate. I used to do that. I would make little guys on motocross bikes. So if you ever find a school book and there's like a little guy on a motocross, little stick man on a motocross bike doing jumps and flips and stuff, that was me. Because you have to do it on the very corner of the bottom left hand corner of the book, the one so you don't get caught, and two so that you can take the book and take you take the bottom page, the last page of the book, and hold the big chunk and just you know and you can see the. You guys, anybody ever do that? Am I the only defacer of school property? I have seen some of those kinds of games played. I think it was the one that had the Martian three-legged walkers in it as well. I saw that game and something else, but those seem like they'd be very, very fun games. But I could also see a lot of people not being into it, especially if you're going to be playing like Sob with Camels and stuff like that, which to me is like uh, where you got to start. I mean, that's I used to have some Sob with Camels hanging from my ceiling in my room because I'd put together hundreds of model airplanes and spaceships when I was a kid. But my mom had painted. She was a bit of an artist. She painted this giant. I kid you not. It was like 5 foot long Sop with camel with Snoopy flying it, and it was all oil painted, so the airplane looked like perfectly realistic. But then there was Snoopy with his goggles. It was freaking awesome. Uh, and she painted that and tacked it up to my room. And I think there was a small red baron off in the corner. Uh, so it was like they were fighting a curse you red baron, which kind of shows you, the frame of mind of Charles Schultz. We rarely think about the artist. He grew up a long freaking time ago. So, as a kid playing, I could see playing a kid, him as a child pretending to be, a fighter pilot that got shot down behind enemy lines, just like the same way my friend Ricky and I used to play Planet of the Apes. We were the astronauts, and all the kids on the playground were the apes, and we were always, hiding from them, trying to not get caught until the bell rang on recess. Uh, but I would love to play games like that, aerial dogfight games with 3D models and miniatures and the farmlands below and things like that. I someone sent me, what was it, Dawn Patrol? Do I have it here? I guess it's in the garage. Oh no, there it is. And I checked it out, and it's not really a role playing game. Um, it's just a why it's lumped in with all the other role playing games like Gangbusters and Gamma World, etc. Uh, it's really not a role playing game. There's Boot Hill is more of a role playing game, to be fair. And I mean Boot Hill first edition, not third edition. I mean first and second edition, which are essentially the same, or the digest version. They're more of a role playing game than Dawn Patrol. As a matter of fact, I used to have a line of metal and plastic model airplanes that included Sop with Camels and later airplanes. They came in these little square boxes. Mind you, this was back in the 70s. A little bit above like Hot Wheels, but there'd be fighter jets and things like that we used to play with. And I remember I got something like that for Jackie when he was a little kid, maybe 3 years old. And they were solid metal, cheap pot metal, die cast, crap airplanes. But his mom was just like dead set against him playing with those because she thought they were dangerous because they had hard edges and some pointy wings and things like that. He's gonna poke his eye out or some crap. And every time she'd find him, she'd like hide them, and then I'd see them. And I'm like, what the shit? These are to be played with. He's not gonna, he's not gonna freaking stick him in an electrical outlet or something. Freaking relax. Um, and eventually, I won that war in there in his toy boxes. Some games are tactical only. Some are heavy tactical, light RP, and so on. Yeah. Kind of like the video I did the other day. You just got to know what you're getting into. One aspect of role playing that people don't like to admit to or don't acknowledge is what's going on in the player's head. They're role playing. It's just like when you're playing Monopoly, and and you're trying to win, and you're trying to pretend to be the real estate mogul, that kind of thing in your head. It's like, yeah, I got all this money. I'm gonna buy this, then I'm gonna buy that. It's kind of role playing. Um, Blue Max, I remember that game actually. Um, and you could definitely role play the early editions of Boot Hill if you choose to. Um, but again, if everybody agrees to that, or the majority agrees to it, you can pull it off. Boot Hill Third Edition was definitely the better, superior version of Boot Hill because it basically just tacked on an actual skill system and some background information, I want to say, and everything you would need to play it. But the best Western RPG game of all time is Wretched Country. Uh, it's got it all. You can play, your Deadlands kind of, supernaturally, or you can play historical, or you can play spaghetti western. It's got it all. Everything is in one small digest size book, really thick digest size book. But I own literally all but two of the Western role playing games and board games that I'm aware of, and Wretched Country is by far the best. Oh, I need to plug in. Hold on a second, guys. Holy crap, I've been doing this for an hour and 12 minutes all by my lonesome. Where is everybody? Normally I have some people joining me in the green room. Not today, huh? Well, I'll tell you what. I will keep this going until the midway point of the hour. And if I don't get any guests, I'm going to call it quits. As you can hear, my voice is uh, pretty thrashed from doing all the talking. I haven't even had time to lay down a single drop of paint. You guys are killing me today, I swear. And this one day, this is what's going to happen. You miss a day, and everybody says, "Oh, we're out." Let's see if I can clean up the palette a little here. I love these silicone fidget poppers. They make cleaning sometimes really easy. Waste less water, less soak time. Sipping coffee, waiting on a business call. No worries, dude. As far as DM James hasn't popped in, I usually, can rely on him. You're going to cover your ideas you mentioned in your morning video yesterday. Did you want to cover them today? I know some of the us responded. uh, Where have I been? Just like I had a thing I had to take care of yesterday. I took care of it. It's all good. Uh, what were we talking about yesterday? What kind of role playing? What kind of role player are you? Uh, thanks, Chris. Um, with the comments we got, especially from RPG Grandma, actually, you know, I can usually go into a game and adapt. If there's going to be like no role playing, I'll slip it in through my snide comments, not at the DM, but to the other players, try to encourage them to talk or act like their character. But if nobody wants it, then you just go full tactical mode, and then do your best to fill your role at the table. But Offgrid says, I love James' love of Hyperborea. I live or love that myth concept, even outside of the gaming aspect. Um, yeah, but it to me, for it to be a sci-fi fantasy game, I want some player agency in being involved in the sci-fi aspect, whether it be like psionics, whether it be owning some technology, whether being a technology based character, knowing how to fix things or make things, or starting with some technological gear, something, as opposed to the way they say, well, it's a sci-fi game, yeah, but if the GM says, oh yeah, it's not. If the player, like in the B&B games I was running, there was one player who was a robot, couldn't do anything about that, right? Wants to play a robot, I could say, oh, no robots, in which case, why would I say that? It sounds like fun, and it was. Or characters going, okay, I bought a flintlock and 20 shots and the powder, etc. Cool, nothing wrong with that. That sounds fun. It means you're going to be fiddling around with that when you could just be, firing arrows. Okay, yeah, but when you do hit, it's going to be devastating. Love it. Or I have a character that has psionic powers, or I have a character that has mutant powers, or I have a character that is a mutant, but is also this, or whatever. Plus the whole, it's only humans, and they're only humans from Earth that was. It's just like I hate that. If there's going to be actual Vikings and things like that, Mongols and Picts, and I'm just playing a Earth game with some fantasy thrown in. And if I'm going to do that, I'd rather play it in the future. That's just me. But as for the, yeah, go with the flow, Grandma. Exactly. I worry though sometimes my tendency to make NPCs and things up, places, etc., can be too much for a ref. Um, that is kind of a 4D thing, but at the same time, if the GM is slow, or I look at it as like helping them out. And there are cases where I've had to say, no, that actually not there. For whatever reason, I have my reasons for the things I do, and if the player is taking liberties, I will nip that in the bud and say, no, thanks for trying to help out, but it's actually a this and not a that, or some such. Um, thanks, Grandma. I appreciate that. Um, I my character has one trait that nobody's picked up on. I'm going to see if they pick up on it. Um, that allows him to muddle through the situations, but you know, if if people would have that, I know so many people out there rail against the Session Zero, but I think it's because we have a name for it now. In the old days, we would talk about, well, what kind of game we want to run before we ran or played or joined a game, right? We didn't have a big fancy name for it. Session Zero. Ooh, look at us, we're so cosmopolitan. Shut the fuck up. We're just freaking talking about what we want to do before we do what we want to do, which is play a game that we're all on board with. Like if I would bring home a new game and I'd lay it down on the table, and people would be, "What the hell's that? We don't want to play a new game." Oh no, I just got it for inspiration. Well, what is it? Oh, it's a game where you do this and you do that, and you can do this or be that, etc. That was session zero. You want in? No, okay, I'll put it on the shelf. Maybe later, maybe someday later you'll want to play in a game like that, or borrow from it. In the meantime, when you guys aren't here, I'm going to read it and see what it has to offer in the way of helpful GM advice, strategy, etc. Right? Uh, and take it from there. Maybe, just maybe, I, as a GM, might learn some new tricks or come up with some new ideas that might help you as the players have a better time. And that's the goal, right? For everybody to have a good time at the table playing whatever game it is you guys have all agreed to play. And if in doing so, uh, we come across a notion, a topic, a mechanic, a rule, a thing that we really like or really don't like, now's a chance to eliminate it from the possibilities of what we're going to do at the table. You know, one of my favorite games of all time, the Amber the Diceless role playing game. When I picked that up and I, you know, told my players about it, those players that had played Amber, or excuse me, had read the Amber books and loved the Amber books were like, "When do we start?" I'm like, "Well, I gotta read it and master it, and whatever it takes to understand it. So you're gonna have to give me some time." The other players are like, "Yeah, I'm not interested. No dice. Sounds like you know this or that." And if you've ever played it, it's you can fail. You can succeed gloriously at whatever it is you're trying to succeed at if you pay attention to what the GM is telling you and your situation, and you pay attention to your character's abilities. I especially like it when the DM answers my questions before players chime in and sideline my agency. That's a big deal to me. I appeal to the referee, not to the peanut gallery. Yeah. Well, some of us are dirty, filthy, nasty rules lawyers, or know the rules very, very well and think that they're going to somehow magically have the right answer when I won't. When while they may have the right answer as per the book, my number one rule in every game, regardless of whether or not the game says it, is that I can pick and choose any rule I want to toss out of the game at any time because it goes against the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish as gamers and as per this particular game world setting. Uh, you know, I try not to do it arbitrarily. To waste some player's agency. It's like, well, I should be able to do this. Yeah, well, at this particular instance, that's not really feasible because of something that maybe the bad guy has that would mitigate that, and I can't tell you about that without telling you exactly what he has. In which case, that ruins that particular surprise. For example, like if a bad guy has a magic item that makes him immune to a spell or an effect, and it doesn't work, and I don't even roll the dice, and you're like, well, he has to make a save. No, he doesn't. What do you mean? You don't have to make a save. Why? Because I said so. What? Because I said so is code for he's got a ring of, magic resistance, or he has magic resistance, and you didn't remember that. And I'm not going to tell you that because then that would give it away, right? And sometimes players are just overly zealous and want to, speed things up, or they just don't have that off button. Um, Not looking at any particular players, because I'm sure we've all done that sort of thing off grid once or twice or 20 times in the last, however long you want to look at it. But I think, like I said before, with a simple conversation, either individually or with the group, you can decide exactly what kind of game you want to run or be in at this particular moment in your life. And if, heavy role playing isn't what you're looking for, you can bow out. You can just mind your P's and Q's and just, state your actions the good old fashioned way. I do this, my character does that, and move along. It's the DMs that and I've been guilty of this at times. Trying to get you to play in character because it's just more fun for everybody to get to hear each other, develop their character and get to know their character's voice and what it would sound like and how they would act versus, it's Billy Joe Bob over there, rolling to hit again. All right, cool. You hit, you missed, you did 13 points of damage. Whereas, Fred over there, freaking duck, dodged, parried, made a backhand slash, and cut the guy's arm off. I mean, what sounds more fun, right? Not gonna lie, I kind of dig seeing the resurgence of 3.5, not Pathfinder, among convention players. They're apparently enjoying the rigid character paths and player agency. Cool. I warn them too. If it's lethal or super rough or something in it that might be difficult for them to deal with, because I can adjust or just shelve that one as a no go for that group. You're right, right. Sometimes people, want to pretend that they're playing a game that's really, really super dangerous, but they really don't. They want those characters to just live on forever or until they retire, which you can't blame them for. But they want the illusion of danger. And the other thing that I've noticed lately that people don't realize that no matter how dangerous the game is, doesn't make it dangerous. You tell them the game is dangerous, you just turned on their most inner paranoia to the to levels that may very well. Sorry, James, didn't see you. I was actually painting for a change. Hey, DM James, how you doing, buddy?
Hey,
Excuse me. That's heresy, pure heresy. Hey, Dean. All right. Sometimes PCs have conflicting agendas. If you tell a player that this game is super lethal, you have just consigned your game to be suddenly freaking slow as molasses, as the players are going to now check for traps every 10 feet and all this other nonsense. At least that's been my experience. Maybe you get the those wild cards that are just completely reckless and don't give two shits. They'll just make up a new character and piss off the other players because now we got to wait for you to make a new character, or now the DM's got to contrive some sort of entrance so that you can join us, and now we have to suddenly care about your character that we just met and act like he's our bestest buddy. What do you think, James?
um, I think that I've actually dealt with what you're saying a little bit, in that I warned the players that the Hyperborea game was going to be very different, and now they're kind of, constantly like worried about everything.
Yeah, and while that's realistic to some extent, it really should come later. They should go into it like hobbits, idealistic and and greenhornish, and unaware of all the shit. And then after, losing a player character or an NPC or something, then they should be like, oh shit, we're not in the Shire anymore. We got to be careful. Yeah, no shit, right?
Pretty much.
But you tell them it's dangerous, and suddenly they're all grizzled professional ex freaking you know MI6 or freaking Green Berets, and they know all the tricks and know all the ways around traps and shit that they would never know in a million fucking years. But because they've been playing for a million years, they think they can use that player knowledge any way they see fit, and I hate that. Yeah, that's called being a bad DM. That's called railroading, and don't do that. Make a world and then let them freaking destroy it. Be prepared for them to destroy your world and revel in its destruction. Otherwise, you will have a very bad time, and you should probably just write novels. Off Grid says something. I think the players involved would turn on each other and separate pretty quickly at the first serious inconvenience, let alone death or loss. Uh, in some cases, especially if you're running a bunch of non-good aligned, anti-hero freaking morally gray bastards, or they would bond and band together and slowly turn toward at least good toward each other. I got your back, bro. You saved my life back there. I'll never forget it. Oh, no worries, man. You saved my back the time before, you know. Um, at least that. Um, because if you're going to stick to your morally gray edge lordy, behavior, why are you even here? Other than to stab them all in the back at the worst opportunity, take their stuff only to get hit by a trap because the GM says you just fucked up the entire game, wasted everybody's time. Doing something that I specifically said I don't want any PvP shit because we're not here to do that. You want to play a war game or a PvP game, we can do that. But if you turn it into that, um, you'll be lucky if all you get is ejected from the table.
Yeah, my group is exactly what you described.
Edge lordy, hate each other, can't trust anyone or anything.
Uh, Last game, they went to a town and the Amazon got super hammered. So I made her roll on this, super hammered sword and sorcery between adventures chart.
Hmm.
She got into a duel to the death, and I decided to be an idiot and let her actually describe what happened to cause the duel. Female player.
Uh huh.
And basically, she got really drunk and took a guy behind the tavern to like diddle around with him. And when he put his pants down, she laughed at his junk. So that caused the duel, which made me regret ever asking for player input like ever again. Because I was just like, damn, you make me feel bad for the NPC at this point. Like, why would you do that? And then,
Well,
the witch told the cleric to stop cursing the mage with impotence. Whatever. But for some reason, oh, and the berserker threatened to just kill them all. So that was the game. However, at the end of the game, all of the players involved said they had an amazing time.
yeah, because they got to be their worst selves and get away with it with no repercussions.
Oh, there were repercussions. Like two of them almost died to a bunch of Draugr. As a matter of fact, I'd never seen the players more tense in my life than
Oh, okay.
they had an encounter in the middle of the night in a deeply like snowy region near Mount Vermithon, and they're talking to each other. And while they're talking, like halfway through, I say, "Okay, you can't talk anymore." And they're like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, your mouth's moved, but no one can hear you." And then I pointed out when they ran around that they couldn't hear their feet crunching in the leaves in the snow. They literally started kind of freaking out, like in real life. You know what I mean?
Uh huh. Because you
Because
silence.
they're in a dark forest surrounded by snow and mountains, and all of a sudden they can't hear anything. Total silence. It was pretty fun. Then they got attacked by a bunch of Draugr, one of whom was a caster, like a rune carver that had
Okay.
actually cast the AoE silence on him.
Uh-huh.
And oh yeah, and the cleric was actually nice and actually laid his hands and healed people, and uh, you know So they're weird. It's like when the job is on, they tighten up. You know what I mean? And they fight
Yeah.
to get the thing done. But the second they're not under immediate threat, they just start finding ways to F with each other.
Well,
And not all of
that's just kind of you could chalk it up to just how people act. When they like each other. When they're guys or they're friends. They fuck with each other, but it's not serious. And Chris, I hate that. If I go into a game and I fail at like five, seven, 10 things in a row, you know what I mean, and I'm not the only one, I'm not coming back. There's no point. It's just too fucking uphill of a battle for my time. Uh, it's just like, yeah, it's too hard. The chances are too low. Why would I have ever left home if I'm this much of a failure? You know what I mean? Why would they let me
well,
adventure if I can't even freaking tie my shoes without having to freaking roll against impaling myself on the little pointy ends of the shoelaces.
I want to say something about see Chris Schaefer is saying a lot of actually really good commentary here. His anyone ever be told a campaign's going to be one way and then find it's the other way? And I want to respond, Chris. A lot of times players do that
Mhm.
because you will tell the players, "Hey, we're going to play whatever kind of game you're going to play," and then one of the idiot players will show up with a character completely designed for an entirely different style of gaming, and then
Yep.
try and force the other players into his idea of what the game should be
Mhm.
like. I've had
Or
to
when
deal
the
with that.
players
I
or
know
when the
other
players
DMs
like
who've had to deal with that.
or when the players know you're going, the previous session at the end you said, yeah, we're going to get ready to go into X dungeon. So you go and you draw X dungeon, and they go, yeah, we don't really want to go there. Oh, okay, so it's going to be a short adventure. Well, as you tell me what we're going to do next week, and I'll see you then. You know what I mean?
See,
That
what
it's
I
like,
do is
no.
I just let them wander around the world, like you said, and get into trouble. But boy, I know you remember me telling you about drawing that 5 layers of a dwarven hold and having the players agree to go there, and then they show up, look inside, and be like, "Nah, let's go back to the city." And I'm just like, "You assholes!" They
Mhm.
did that the other day though too, because I thought they're going to travel overland, and by the other day I mean weeks and weeks ago. I
Mhm.
thought they were going to travel overland, so during the week I pre-rolled all the encounters, set all everything up, and the first time they got to that, they could get a boat. He took a boat, and just I was like, "You assholes," But there's the example Chris gives brings to mind, like when I say, "Okay, you guys are starting in a keep in the middle of the wilderness." And so it's going to be like a dungeon exploration slash survival type game. And then one player shows up playing some kind of Ponzi duelist and starts talking about we should go to the largest city near us and do a city game instead. And it's like, but everyone's here to play the, wilderness frozen north, try not to die to Slavic monsters game. No one gives a shit about the fact that the one player wants to swashbuckle at the dock or some shit.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and
I've
yeah,
never been in a bait and switch. Um, and if I'm not alone in feeling that in session one or two, um, I'll voice my concerns and have the GM address them. Any remote indicators that is in fact the situation, I'm just out. It's like, dude, you could have just said this, and we probably would have, you know, jumped on. But the closest I've ever done to anything like that was having technology be behind the source of the weirdness in a fantasy game, and people got to figure that out because the entire world that I had created uh, had a lot of ancient technology that could be discovered. Mind you, this was back in the 80s. Yeah, off grid. We are blessed and cursed with the fact that every one of our players that we know is a GM. When I came to this environment, I didn't know another
Shadow,
GM. Hmm.
I gotta take off for just 1 second. I'm muting myself because I think my dog groomer's here to pick the dog up.
No worries, no worries. I'll stick around. Um, and nowadays, we are surrounded by people who've GM'd, many of which or whom are pretty accomplished DMs, and so getting them to the table is awesome, but it's also difficult in different ways because you know uh, they may throw in their or not be able to turn off their DM switch at the table, kind of like the Krusty the Clown doll. They need to keep it in the good slot, not the evil slot, and just hang out for the ride. Yeah, if a player comes to the table, I usually, you know, like off grid can attest. When I have a game on like Sunday or whatever, I always make sure we spend a couple of minutes getting to get the temperature of the room. How's everybody doing? What's new? That sort of thing. So like if I get like an indicator that player X is like kind of grouchy, kind of grumbly, kind of in a bad mood, or even sad or bummed out, or just stressed, I'll find some little ways to help fix that the best I can. Do something. It's just a band aid. It's like for a few short hours when I'm going to hang out with my bro. He had a rough week. I'm going to make his week a little better. I'm going to, be the little bit of icing that he gets on that cake for that session, at least, so that when he leaves, he's like, yeah, that was fun. Oh yeah, now I got to deal with the this or the that. Because that's why we do this to get away from all of that, right? So we shouldn't be constantly um, like Chris said, where you just fail at everything. Fuck, God only knows what your friend's week was like. They may feel like that's what they just went through. I failed at this. I got fired. I got this. I got that. The kids are being this and that, and now I come to the game and it's nothing but more of that. That's the last thing I ever want to do. So I would rather err in the side of like the Care Bear DM and be too nice than the opposite. Oh yeah, it was challenging and half the party died. Oh, and I lost two players. Versus, players think it's too easy, etc. Ask off grid. There are many, many times where it's not too easy. It may be too easy now, but you can guarantee down the line. And last thing you want to do is tell me this is too easy or I did something wrong, because uh, I'm only human, and I may add a little extra damage to the next time you get freaking smacked by some monster. I'm kidding, of course, but I will remember. Oh, hey, yeah, you being a schmuck. I had a group do that to me. They went to the ruins and nope, and decided to go to the beach, reskin the adventure to sea terrors, worst horrors, blood on the beach. It was, yeah. I mean, not to advocate for the quantum ogre, but if you did the thing and you did the work, and the players are going to nope out at the first sign of your well narrated freaking spooky entrance, what you're supposed to be scared. I mean, that's how bravery works. You're supposed to be scared and do it anyways, right? Otherwise, then you are a coward. You cowardly noped out at the first sign of ooh spookiness. Ooh, there were some skeletons at the entranceway. Ooh, no shit. There should be skeletons at the entranceway to every freaking dungeon, right? Constantly comparing your rulings to how they would have done it. I thanks off grid. I Yeah, of course that's how you would do it. You're the player in the position to where it's not going your way. No shit, you've done it differently. Big fucking surprise. Could you be more transparently selfish and self-centered? I can't think of a better way to say I'm a selfish prick than to say something like that. Uh, that's not cool to do that. Yeah, yeah. The last thing you want to do is insult your GM while he has your character's life in his hands. Uh, just saying. Uh, Surprise your real life selves find themselves transported into the campaign. Or surprise your real life selves are transported into your characters' bodies. You know what? I'm actually getting ready to do a video about playing as yourself because I have some thoughts on that. Thank you for reminding me. Maybe I'll do that for tomorrow. I just did a review today, and even though I have two more reviews uh, almost ready, I don't want. I only like to do one game review a week, unless they're from two different companies. And surprise, surprise, the next game review is probably from the Red Room, which seriously, guys, if you have not bought one Red Room game or PDF or something, you really should check them out. Look for one that's like your favorite genre and see how they do it. Because they've cut out all the overly complicated mechanics and boiled them down, not to like tri-stat, flip a coin kind of mechanics, but you know just make it as simple as possible, simple mechanics, and you can just get on with the role playing part. Exactly, Grandma. It is, after all, just a game of pretending. For goodness sake, which, oh my God, Grandma, have you ever had like the reaction to the word pretend that I've seen over the last couple of years, or make believe? Oh God, you say that, you just get some danders up, don't you? Oh my God, people hate being reminded that they're playing like a 5-year-old kid in the backyard with rules and dice and grown-ups and oh my, yeah, get over it. We're the luckiest bastards on the planet. We have not lost sight of that oh so magical quality of life. We have not ground it into the earth like so many others and just beat that to death and excised it from our existence. And we can actually go outside and still breathe in the magic that is life and possibility and hope and goodness instead of just being a bitter, grouchy old fart. On a positive note, a friend of mine ran the movie Fire and Ice as a sword and sorcery campaign. We took the place of the main characters. He used the rule of cool, and it was awesome. Of course it was. I mean, it was Fire and Ice. I mean, how could it not be, right? And there's nothing wrong with stealing blatantly. It's not like the IP police are going to come knocking on your door telling you to knock it off. But when you go to print it, you know, you might be getting a phone call from a lawyer, but you know, uh, swipe and borrow and plagiarize the shit out of whatever you want, until you go to print. That's to think that we all haven't been doing that when we all know, or most of us know. Back in my day, there were 10 plots. Over the years, they boiled them down to 7 or 6 or whatever. Shut up, there's 10. I'm going with 10. We can argue elsewhere about that. Okay, there are 10 story plots in all of human literature, and we're going to reuse them often to excess or ridiculousness sake to to put forward our ideas in the next campaign, the next session, etc. Yeah, fun is not a bad word. Um,
King Chris, again, knocking it out of the park with the statement. Fire and Ice is basically just a Hyperborean adventure put to animation. I know Shadow can say not, but Necron is obviously a cryomancer. I mean, that's 100% a fact. Cryomancers are in Hyperborea. Necron
I
is
just
a
find it funny that
cryomancer.
you choose to state it as fire and ice is Hyperborea, when wouldn't the statement be more accurate that Hyperborea is fire and ice?
Well, Hyperborea is any sort of sword and sandals, schlocky kind of pulp
Right, but my
story.
point is you're putting the emphasis on
And so even though
reversing
Conan and
chronological
Fire and
history.
Ice came out first,
Exactly.
they're still Hyperborea. Because think
No,
about it,
that's
some
not how time
crazed.
works.
Okay, it's how it works for me because I'm dwelling in a setting a billion years in the future, powered by
I
old
understand.
gods. So
No, what I
whatever.
mean is chronologically and historically and legally,
You're getting caught up
Fire
on
Night.
time.
Well, but you're stating it as like Fire and Ice is
Yog-Sothoth
copying
does not
Hyperborea,
care about time. He is the gate and the key.
but it's as the way you say it.
I'm just
Sometimes
agitating Shadow to death here. No,
you're
what I'm
saying that
saying is,
it's
in
yeah.
line with my recent series event
Have some respect for the
of
original
video
IP,
Shadow,
man. That's all I'm saying.
will it Hyperborea? Yes, it
Okay,
will
cool. I hate
Hyperborea.
those two guys who coined that
Amazingly,
phrase, but
because
thanks for bringing that up.
Necron is a cryomancer. He's trying to push ice into places where there isn't ice.
Right.
And the guy who fights against him could be some sort of, I don't know, Celt or Cimmerian or whatever
Mhm.
barbarian. And the Death Dealer, God only knows what he is, except for the guy on Molly Hatchet covers, right? I
I would
bet
ask
you
them
you could
or
even.
Frazetta. Oh wait,
Well,
you can't ask
Frazetta is the
Frazetta,
guy who drew the Molly Hatchet covers.
but he's also no longer with us. So you'd have to ask his daughters, who I am certain would be happy to tell you, because I'm certain they probably know, and they're still kicking and doing, uh,
I think he's just a
keeping up with
badass
the.
barbarian, to be brutally honest. He wears some kind of
Uh,
panther skin for a hat, and he rides around a big horse with a freaking big ass axe or whatever. I mean, he's a barbarian or berserker, obviously. But the
I
main
don't know
point
that
I
that
wanted
to
to
be the
get to
case.
with Chris is, I bet you he could even write Fire and Ice as an adventure, and if he changed just a few things here and there, he could get away with it. Catch you later, off grid. And I mean,
Take care. We'll see you later, man.
because the idea of an evil mage doing evil mage shit and being served by a bunch of cavemen or whatever. I mean, Fire Knights don't own that. That's half of Conan's books or half of R.E. Howard's novels right there, you know? Evil mage
Right.
and a bunch of degenerate subhumans. So just change some stuff around, and the next thing you know, perfect. I mean, it would run good in any Hyborian or Hyperborean type setting, to be honest. Maybe not Savage Sword, but any other one.
Why not that?
I don't know. I'm just digging at you. I don't know much about Savage Sword at all. Would it run in Burrows and Borderlands? Probably.
oh yeah, they're uh, clearly B and B is uh, more science and sorcery than Hyperborea. You can start as all kinds of non-human robot android cyborgy type characters from level one on, and you're in control of the tech, so to speak. Whereas Hyperborea is, if the GM chooses, there will be no tech ever in your hands, and I don't like that. If you're going to advertise as science and sorcery, I want to play some science right off the bat. If I can't, then it's not. If at first level I make my character, I
Um,
can't start with some sort of proof.
Shadow, why would you
You know,
play Hyperborea if you were going to ignore what I consider to be such a huge part of it, which is the weird science part?
no. What I mean
Might as
is, if
well
my
just
character
play
doesn't start,
AD&D or something.
I don't think you heard what I said. I said if I can't start with some science on my character sheet, it's not a science and sorcery game.
Oh,
It's a
I didn't
sorcery.
hear exactly what you said. You're right. Sorry, my bad, bro.
Yeah. I want to run a cyborg or an android or have a laser pistol or have Thundar's Sun Sword. Something that proves to me that this is in fact science and sorcery, because a bad GM running Hyperborea can go, oh, imagine that. I haven't never rolled a random technological treasure item for you to find. And as of yet, you've never run into a science like monster or creature or thing that you could ever benefit from, thus depriving you of any of the actual
Well,
science.
like you said, a bad DM would do that,
Right,
not a
right.
good DM.
Right. And I've met many, like in Gamma World, for Christ's sake. I have been in games of Gamma World where we never, ever got to benefit from any of the cool sciency equipment. It either killed us or we killed ourselves trying to figure out how to make it work. That is a shit game.
Yeah, no. When I play Gamma World, I actually like to start the players off in a village that's at least at like early kind of settler, black powder era. So if they
Exactly.
want to start out with a couple of flintlocks or something, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, because it gives them what does it give them? It gives them a good couple of shots at the beginning of an encounter that then alerts everything for a mile that there's people, throwing lead down range, and you might want to go watch or watch out for said encounter so you don't get shot, or maybe there's some free carrion when it's all over, or maybe there's some people, who are going to get into a fight and you can ambush the winners and take all the stuff. All kinds of
Yeah.
weird, sort of
And if they're
things
pure
like that.
strain human shadow, if they're pure
Hmm.
strain human village, not only would I give them like cap and ball rifles, muskets, but I would allow them to, if they had the money or whatever to start with, to buy like a revolver. I'm talking like the old cap and ball Clint Eastwood style
Yeah, yeah,
36
yeah.
caliber or 44. I would let them
Hmm.
start with that because it's like the idea that you're playing Gamma World, but you're somehow like a stunning civilization. And it's like, but you're surrounded by ruined cities full of technology. It's like, no, you got to kind of find a like any group of humans that have access to ruins to be able to actually see technology is going to figure out, monkey see, monkey do, how to make some
Well, not
stuff.
only that, but like, like this is a good example. I'm glad you brought it up. What if, right? The world that was at the point where they no longer even had black powder because it was just so archaic, and everybody was running around with stunners and laser pistols and plasma rifles and shit like that. Um, you might even have some of those. Maybe the characters wouldn't have them, but the town watch might have, laser rifles or machine guns or whatever. You know what I mean? That shit isn't gonna just. You're not gonna suddenly end up in caveman days and have to work your way up to the Middle Ages to where the players are, and everybody's running around with swords and shields. Those things might never come back. If
Well, it
we
might
went.
be more like Barter Town.
Mhm. But
Remember
I mean,
Mad
if you
Max
think about like
Barter
the
Town?
sword.
Like when you go into the tavern, there could be a grizzled old bastard sitting there with like some kind of laser pistol strapped to his waist or something, or because he used to adventure and he found one and he knows how to
Yep.
use it too. I'm
And
just saying my basic player start out would probably be somewhere like if we're talking Earth, just
yeah,
around the middle or beginning of the American Civil War.
right.
So could there be actual Gatling guns? Absolutely. And of course, they're going to figure black powder out either just through trial and error or someone's going to
What's
find a
up,
science
Steve?
book.
Stephen.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right. Or, but I was thinking about swords. They always want to bring back swords, and if we went, forward another 100 or 200 years, and then got blasted back to, whatever. I don't think people would be running around with swords. I think you definitely see the spear and the axe, but would you really see the
Bayonet
sword
for
come
sure.
back? The sword was
The
very,
only way I see the sword coming back shadow would be as like a backup weapon.
or
Again,
maybe
I'm
the
thinking like,
machete.
the old West.
Mhm.
Like you
I think
rely
you'd
on
see
your
more
revolver,
machetes and
but
and, and
you know,
sabers, but you definitely would not see like the long sword or the two-handed sword. You'd never see those again. You might see sabers, machetes, uh, long daggers and
Well,
things like
machetes
that.
for sure, man.
I mean,
Think
especially when
about
they're
that.
$5.
Machete's a tool. That's a tool. Whether you can whack somebody in the head with it or not is not the point. The point is,
Right.
if you're digging around through vine covered something, you would see machetes, you would see axes, you might even see like the Napoleonic style, what they called hunting swords, which in reality were just their version of a machete. You know, it was just like the front of it was an edge single, a single edge blade, and the back had saw teeth so that engineers could go out and if they didn't have access to actual axes or something, they could use their sword to saw through stuff. It's like,
Right. You
yeah,
might
you
even
see a
see
lot of stuff like that, I think.
but like a long sword or a katana. No, you
No,
probably
I'm with
wouldn't see
you,
it.
man. Unless somebody
But I
found it
just
in a
always found it
museum and
funny
just thought,
that Gamma World always tried to throw the sword in there. I'm like, yeah, what? You're joking, right? Especially when you think about 99% of the swords in existence right now are barely good enough for wall hangers. So you'd have a blade with no handle, because that thing would have rotted away like in a week of being outside in the weather. It would just fall apart.
you're not willing
So
to
you'd have like,
spend $300, right? Or $400 for a cold iron sword. You're generally getting exactly what you said, a Pakistani built piece of crap.
mhm. And so you'd have a really long spear blade, cool, and that would bend at the first impact with anything with hide tougher than a rhino's, which of course you would see all the time in the post-apocalyptic world of Gamma World. You'd see a lot of friggin' armored freaking, Triceraclops or whatever. Uh, so that's useless. You'd probably be better off just using that as breaking it in half and making some kitchen implements out of it. Um,
It's funny because a few years ago, this girl I dated like 20 years ago sent me out of the blue a sword that was based on Aragorn's sword, Narsil or whatever, right?
mhm.
So I went out in the backyard. I didn't know any better, and I started whacking my banana trees with it, and the damn sword bent. So I straightened it out, and just hung it on the wall, because
I've got a, I've got a
it
rep,
was
a
some cheap
replica.
Pakistani freaking whatever, and I was like, whatever.
Even if it came from uh, Atlanta replica museum replicas, whatever, Atlanta cutlery museum replicas. Don't swing it at anything other than a naked person who's come at you because they're on PCP. Otherwise, you're going to bend that thing like a strap of leather, man.
Now I
It's
know
just
we're getting off
absolute
topic, but
ridiculous.
I've had really good experience with cold iron or cold steel, I think it is. They make 440 tensile strength steel medieval
Mhm.
weapons. I've bought a Viking axe from them. I've bought an arming sword from those guys, and those are real deal. You can use this in a fight swords, but I think you're right. But anyway, yeah, Hyperborea is different than Burrows and Borderlands in that the science is like thousands of years old or super alien. So the players may or may not even realize that the thing they have is scientific and not, because that
Yeah,
saying about technology.
sure.
So I mean, like one of the guys in my group has a pistol. They think it's a wand that shoots crimson bolts of lightning,
As they should, unless they
even though they
are
do know that it's made out of metal and some kind of weird metal, and it's got ancient Atlantean script all over it. Ran a
but
game where Kiss were demigods in his setting. I could absolutely see that. Gene Simmons is like the lawful evil demigod of, I don't know, vice and lechery and big tongues or something. I mean, the Starman could be like the deity of the demigod of like freaking travel or space or I mean, the cat guy could be like the god of beasts in the wilderness, and then who's the other guy? I always forget number four. I know you've got the cat,
Paul
Starman, and the
Stanley,
demon.
Paul Stanley, the
Yeah.
god of lechery and debauchery, sexual
Well, I would say
perversion.
the demon would be the god of sexual perversion because he's the
Oh
one
no,
with
no,
the
no,
big
no.
tongue.
Paul Stanley was far more that than Gene Simmons.
But
Gene Simmons would be more.
what was his code name though, or stage name?
I don't remember. It
Because
might have been
he
Star
did have.
Child or something. Even
Yeah,
though
you had
Ace
this like the
Frehley,
star guy, the cat guy, the demon guy. Who was the other guy?
the space guy, Ace Frehley.
Okay.
But like uh, it just I grew out of them a long time ago. I used to be a big fan of them around about fourth
Mm.
grade, and grew out of them about sixth grade because it was just
I was never a Kiss fan. I know them just because, come on, it's Kiss. Everybody
Mhm.
knows Kiss. However, will say Gene Simmons, the god of money. Well, that is true. That dude. I will say this though, the song Strutter is pretty much rock and roll perfection. I do like that song. And I'm
But
not
they
even a
had a lot
fan
of
of
good stuff.
Kiss,
I'm
but
not going to lie either. Just the some of the things just weren't
I
weren't
think
my
they were a
style.
bunch of untalented hacks that got over because of the stage show.
No, I mean they
Like
could
if you
play. Ace
compare
Frehley
them
was
to
a
say Blue Oyster Cult, they can't play instruments as good as anybody in Toto or Blue Oyster
oh
Cult or
no. But I mean they could play, and they did learn. They're kind
yeah,
of
they
like
could
Bill and
play.
Ted. They learned to play as they were able to hire people to teach them or whatever. I mean, but they started out honestly, from what I remember, I could be wrong, as a circus act.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, it's all stage show.
No, I mean literally in a circus.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But Strutter is badass. As soon as I hear the opening riff and the drums for that one, I'm just like, oh yeah, this is a good one though.
Oh yeah, they
That
were a lot
one's
of fun. I
great.
mean, uh, rock and roll all night and party every day. Come on, who doesn't want to be part of that
Yeah,
during their teenage years? Come on. I mean, unless
right.
you didn't drink or you didn't smoke, you didn't do any of that shit, then okay, maybe not. But since I did and was, that was our anthem practically. For a whole generation, or at least here in uh,
See, my
the
anthem
land of
was "Fight for Your
debauchery.
Right."
Yeah, we didn't even know who those guys were until after they were nobodies.
Beastie Boys, you
Yeah,
gotta
they
fight.
were. You got to remember, that was a New York thing, and we were as far from New York as possible. So they
Yeah.
just weren't. We never really uh, did the rap thing out here. It was like uh, there was nothing about it that was popular in California until a certain point, and that point was roughly when all the fans of metal had to go completely elsewhere. All the fans of rock and roll had to go elsewhere to see that. When MTV like flipped the switch from good music to rap, we all had to go elsewhere to get that, and because of that,
At least for a
it
while,
wasn't.
you had Headbangers Ball, right?
Right, but that was not like a daily reinforcement of that sort of thing. We did have radio stations that stayed around past the demise of MTV, or the rise of rap, as we called it.
Mm.
Uh,
Home and now.
yeah, it was literally kind of that. I
That's
mean,
what we got going on the chat, home and now. East Coast versus West Coast beefing it up over here over Hyperborea and Arduin. I'm waiting for Shadow to start throwing up the West Side symbols and shit, right? Like Tupac.
we in a way we were more true to uh, our roots. We didn't just Like, oh, the radio tells us metal's no longer fun and good, and we have to all now listen to rap. We didn't buy into that. We had at least three
Well,
different
we
radio
did both.
stations.
We
Yeah,
did
but see,
both. I was still jamming like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden while I was listening to Beasties too. I mean, it was like, and
it just
Ramones, of
nothing about it.
course.
It's like this. I grew up surrounded by electric guitarists, electric guitars, electric guitar music, and there was none of that in rap. They completely said we do not want to ever hear the electric guitar again. And for us, that was like that. This means war. We gauged every band on how good their guitarist was, how awesome these musicians were in something that 100 years ago did not exist. And I just I couldn't back it. I couldn't find anything to appreciate. Being surrounded by musicians and people who could play instruments, watching rap and going, I don't see a single instrument, but I see 13 dudes up on stage dancing like women. What the fuck? What is this? This is not masculine at all. They may try to act tough and frown and make faces and talk a certain way, etc. But their clothes are clean and bright and shiny and feminine looking to us, and everything that is like literally the exact opposite of what we were. So there was nothing for us to like about it, and the fact that it was pushed so hard on us through MTV and the radio and TV, etc. It's like,
Right.
yeah, they're trying to brainwash us into liking this new thing that's the exact opposite of the old thing that existed for decades. You know what I mean? Think about how far back metal goes.
Well,
1970.
because your general basic bitch rap is just 3 minute long adverts for shit you don't want. But
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah, like
Beasties,
crime.
Licensed to Ill, all the drum beats were pretty much Zeppelin drum beats. And I think they may have actually had the lead guitarist from Slayer doing their guitar riffs and shit. Because the Beasties went hard. Beastie Boys, they went hard with the freaking metal mixed with rap kind of thing. They like when you listen to No Sleep Till Brooklyn, I mean that there is just a killer death metal riff going on
No, that,
throughout
that
that
was
whole
that was the
song.
later stage Dino with the makeup and the big hair toward the end of or the middle of the 80s. I'm talking 1970s Black Sabbath, 1970s Deep Purple, 1970s Judas Priest, before um,
I was
before
just listening to Turbo Lover. I swear to God,
way
before I
before that.
logged
I'm
on.
talking like Rockarola, Sin After Sin, Hellbent for Leather, Unleashed in
Breaking the
the
Law.
East, before British Steel, uh, Judas Priest, before you even knew what they looked like, because they weren't on their album covers all dressed like they just got out of the Blue Oyster Cult downtown, Brooklyn or whatever. Um,
You hush your mouth, sir. I don't mind looking at those videos where they're all riding around in spiky leather like a bunch of road warrior wannabes.
well, they
Turbo
were
Lover is
literally
awesome.
dressing when they were dressing like that back then. They were actually emulating, in a lot of ways, the biker culture from Australia back in the, I want to say, right after WW2. There was a biker culture. James L could back me up on this. Where it was a lot of jean jackets, jeans. Look at King Harvest. You ever see those guys? They do Dancing in the Moonlight. Everybody knows that song, right?
Dancing in the moonlight,
Go look
everybody's
at them. Go
feeling
look at
out
any
of.
picture of them. They were some scary looking motherfuckers. I mean, long hair, afros, beards, freaking not a lot of leather, but a lot of jean jackets and vests, and just
So
grungy as hell looking.
Canadian tuxedos. a jean jacket and a pair of jeans. So we
Right.
got Dino Laser said he was born in '78. He was thinking Cinderella. Look,
No, no,
I
no,
saw
no, 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 no.
Cinderella in concert opening for David Lee Roth, and
Yeah, no, no, no.
Poison
Even
Every
even
Rose
even
Has Its
Van
Thorn
Halen,
is a killer song.
even Van Halen wasn't heavy metal. That was just hard rock.
Yeah, that's hard rock.
Technically,
Metal was definitely for me like Maiden, Metallica, Motorhead, Sabbath. Um,
Deep Purple. Deep Purple was one of the first heavy metal bands of all time, and everybody just glosses right over them. Um,
because I don't like them. That's why I ignored them.
I was not a big fan of them either, and they did get softer as the '80s came to a close. Street of Dreams, anything with Joey Lynn Turner as the singer. Uh, Not even going to go into that. I met them,
The Smoke
and
on the Water did have a pretty awesome crunchy riff, though. The guitar riff
uh,
for Smoke on the Water is pretty
Steppenwolf, Born to Be
Born to Be
Wild,
Wild.
stuff, all of that kind of music that if the band came into your neighborhood, you'd be like, oh, oh, okay, what's going on here? Until you saw the band logo, and then even then you might not be sure, you know, uh, if Medusa or Sirathungal or some weird ass nobody band showed up driving through your neighborhood, you'd be like, whoa, when did the biker gang get here? Um,
Yeah,
Bloister Cold.
Rammstein.
It's
Omenau mentions Rammstein, and I would say, while I don't think Rammstein is heavy metal, I do
definitely hard
think
rock
that they put
or
on one of
pop.
the best shows you will ever see. Their shows are amazing. And
I,
whatever kind of music that it's almost like industrial metal or because it's got a lot of keyboard and a lot of
I would
synth
go with
vibe.
it's an amalgamation of different things, and that's one of the things I like about certain bands like Blister Cult and Styx. They had a bunch of musicians with different backgrounds and different skill sets and experiences, whereas like rap, it's all the same mindset. Everybody has the same exact mindset and the same exact urban grown up lived experience with little variations in the way. You can guarantee there's no dads in the picture. They're freaking out on the streets, freaking trying to scam anyone and anything and everyone that comes their way just to get enough to make do. Whereas metal had a lot of different. Not saying they didn't have any of those things, going on in their lives, but they usually actually had, let's face it, higher IQs, better educations, and interests that didn't revolve around any of the things I just mentioned.
In the '70s, I was kind of hardcore into like a lot of prog rock,
Oh,
like
sure,
Two Way
Rush,
Army, freaking ELO.
Pink
I would
Floyd.
consider ELO to
Oh
be
God,
100% prog rock.
ELO is one of the greatest bands ever.
Oh
Absolutely,
yeah,
just so underrated because of
2025.
time.
I love that song.
Um,
Yours truly, 2025 or 2095, whatever it is. The whole he's singing about dating an android and all that shit. It's the news,
they were
Mr. Blue
ahead of their
Sky.
time, still appreciable today. Unfortunately, they are going to end up, completely forgotten. Uh,
Not by me.
no, but when you and I are gone, there are going to be very few people that remember them, and their stuff will disappear. And then later on, some corporate guy will be like, "Hey, let's steal this for a commercial, and this for a commercial, and this for a commercial," and everybody will think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they'll have no clue where it came from, and you won't even have the ability to do the research to find out where it came from, if they have their way. Pink Floyd, another great prog band. Although I didn't like their early stuff, their later stuff I liked more. As my favorite album of theirs was uh, "Momentary Lapse of Reason," I think it was called, or was that just a song
Mm.
off it? I
Yeah,
know
lots
everybody
of
hated that
older
album.
stuff like grooving in a cave with fuzzy animals and a pict or something was just like, what are you even doing? But when they got
That
to
was
like
acid
Dark
rock.
Side of the
That was
Moon and shit
clearly
like
acid
that,
rock, and
yeah,
people were
once they hit
didn't
like
want.
Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, Wish You Were Here, all that sort of stuff, they really came into their own. It was like, wow,
Sure, sure.
this is good. And I don't know why they made that transition. I don't know what happened, but something happened and they just got Alice Cooper. I love Alice Cooper.
Who doesn't?
How can you not love Alice Cooper? I mean,
Well, if you are older than
no more
us,
Mr. Nice Guy.
if
That's
you're
so
older
good.
than us, you could easily have been confused about the name, and then seeing the makeup and stuff, and thinking the wrong things, which you know were not true. And considering how much of a based Christian he is, would probably surprise all of his detractors big time.
Yeah, well, see, I didn't even know that about him until recently, and I still just liked his songs.
Hmm.
But I like that kind of dark, like 18, how it's slow and it's kind of dark and he's just throwing it out there. I mean, of course you like that. No more Mr. I like his new stuff, like
Oh,
Poison. I like that,
it was okay. Um,
but
I
I'm
had an
kind of
ex
basic in
who
my
was
music
very into his
taste, so
music, and that's the only experience I got. I had with it. Except occasionally I'd hear a song on the radio or something, but
Mhm.
it really wasn't super popular out here for whatever reason. Um,
Yeah, I think he's another East Coaster, ain't he?
yeah, and it really wasn't so much that.
Did you guys out in California like Ramones though?
Oh hell yeah,
Okay,
oh
because
yeah,
we love Ramones. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, but
Like
they were
everyone
also
loved the Ramones.
they were I mean they hit all the right buttons and notes, uh, and
Well, 2 minute
it
long
worked.
songs, straight to the point. One, two, three, four. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
that was kind of their thing. Every
and
song
that's
was
great.
one, two, three, four.
And the song's over.
And then the song was like, okay. Shadow, I gotta
I,
take off. It's getting late.
yeah, no worries. I was only gonna go on for a bit. We've been here 2.5 hours. I appreciate it. If me coming
I
on
completely
at 9 is
derailed
a
you.
little.
You were happily painting and getting stuff done and being productive.
No, I got some painting done, but I did go on for an hour and 15 minutes by myself, which I'm not a fan of. So if starting at 9 is too early to get guests in, let me know, and I can push it back a little.
Not
Or
at all. I was just distracted, and then when I saw the clock, I was like, "Oh shit, Shadow's on."
cool, because I don't think it's all that enjoyable to watch me, you know, fill airtime for an hour waiting for people to show up. It seems a
I
little
don't know. I
sad.
watched you for a little while before I joined. I thought it was enjoyable. You were having opinions. I was agreeing with a lot of them. But
I
I gotta get
appreciate it.
going. And peace and
Me
love,
too.
bro. You know that.
Everybody have a great day. I will see you guys tomorrow.